Hi, Vanessa. Thank you so much for chatting to Lover's Way about Only a Monster. Absolutely
Thank
loved
you.
this one. I was hoping we could kick things off by having you talk a little bit about the inspiration behind the story.
Thank you for having me first. I guess to say a little synopsis, Only a Monster is about a monster girl whose summer gets ruined when this cute guy at work turns out to be a monster slayer.
Bit of a mood
And
killer.
yeah, it's not how she thought it was going to go. Um, and I guess I was inspired by that feeling when the hero of a story isn't necessarily the hero of your story. I guess when I was growing up, I always really loved like big blockbuster action films and TV shows. But it wasn't very often that I would see a hero that looked like me. But sometimes I would notice for some reason that the bad guys would sometimes look like me. They would just show up. Sometimes like these Asian characters would just show up just for a fight scene, and then the hero would like kill them or beat them up. And I've got this line in the book that is about how when the bad guys are killed in a movie, the camera follows the hero away from them. But for me, sometimes I'm just aware of the few people in a film that look like me, which sometimes means I'm really aware of just these people lying dead on the ground as the
Mm.
camera moves away and follows the hero. So I was just thinking it would be really interesting to write a story about, what if a hero, and maybe even like a really good, decent, upright hero, like the ones that are portrayed in those movies, is fighting against you rather than for you. So that was my original inspiration for wanting to write from a monster's point of view.
Absolutely. And it's something we just rarely see. And I really, really loved that take because there was still so much that you saw in Nick that you're like, yeah, this is what we usually see in, when they're the main
Yeah.
character. So really, really good. I really loved that
Thank
twist.
you.
And how much of your own experience went into writing Joan's experience?
I'm second generation. My dad is Chinese from Malaysia. And I feel like I really wanted to put kind of that diaspora experience that is really common to so many Australians. And I really wanted to explore in particular that feeling when you're kind of raised around a culture that you're removed from the original context of that culture, so you don't always know what is part of that culture, what is just your family's personality and their own little like traits. So I definitely wanted to give my main character Joan a bit of an experience like that. There's like one section where she's like going into the monster world for the first time, and she's given some food that she's like, oh, this tastes really familiar. This is like something my grandmother made, but I thought only my grandmother made this food.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's just told, oh no, that's like monster food. So she was like, oh, I wasn't aware that had a bigger context.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to write like little, I guess, experiences like that into the book.
So what does it mean for you to have yourself represented in this book, but also, I'm sure so many others could relate to that as well. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, I, always wished that I could read about characters who kind of looked and sounded like me, kind of characters of the Asian diaspora, having these, really exciting adventures in these magical worlds. So I really intentionally wanted to make my main character have a similar background to mine. So her dad is also Chinese from Malaysia. And yeah, I feel like it was really important to me. I've heard it's been resonating a bit with other people as well. So that's been really gratifying and exciting.
It's just full of so much. I love it so much. So I do really want to talk about the monsters because they really appeal to me because like they have such a rich, family dynamics, culture itself, their whole world. And what they do is monstrous, but they're not that violent to humans, which I thought was a really interesting take. So I don't like gore, so that was good for me.
Same.
But yeah, it works because what they still do is still like so awful. Did the monsters and what they can do go through many takes before you settled on this, or were they like that from the start?
Surprisingly, they didn't go through that many takes. I always knew that I wanted the monsters to look like humans. So I wanted it to be like they live in the same world that we do. And I guess their monstrous power is that they can steal time from a human's lifespan, and then they can use that time to travel in time. It is a violent act, but it's like a covertly violent act. You would never know the monster had attacked you and stolen a bit of your life. But yeah, it was mostly because I had wanted them to be, I guess, hiding in plain sight. So I didn't want the human world to be aware of them. So they really had to have a covertly dangerous power.
Yeah. No, it works really well because it just is so good. It's just really unlike anything I've read before. So really fascinating. I really, really love the story about sort of how you started to sit down and write this book, that you were out for a dinner, you all decide, like, you all realize you're writing books.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to, actually, I would love to hear more about that dinner. But it's one thing to just be like, yeah, I'm going to write a book, and another to actually finish it and hold it in your hand.
I know.
Yeah, how did you, like, were there ever any moments where you thought this was too hard, and how did you keep going?
Yeah, I mean, this was my first book that I'd ever written. So I really was doing things like at the beginning, Googling, how do you make a character, and what is a scene?
So this is the first book you've ever read. Oh, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Oh
I read a lot of books, but yeah, it's the first book I wrote.
Okay.
So that was definitely difficult. But I really I guess I'm the kind of person that really loves learning new things. So it was really fun for me to, I guess, almost problem solve. How do I make a book? But I definitely had, probably this beginning was the most difficult section, just because there was so much to set up, but I was also really keen to make it a really page-turny book, so to keep up the momentum. So that was difficult to find that balance of making sure you still want to turn the page while also conveying enough information that when the monster slayer is revealed, it's kind of a shock and you understand all the impact of it as well.
Yeah. I love that you've just had it was like a scientific formula to write a book.
Oh, yes.
Can you share those notes with me later?
Oh, yeah.
But it's interesting that you say that, because the pacing was something that really stuck out to me, because there was, you always go into a book thinking you know what it's about, and then there's always something that comes up and is different. But that happened throughout the entire book, like right to the very end. So yeah, the pacing, you got it. It was so good.
Thank you. I definitely really put a lot of work into even just figuring out what makes you want to keep turning the page. So I had to, it was definitely a lot of mechanics.
And it worked.
Yeah,
I love that so much. So can you tell us a little bit more about that dinner?
Yeah, so I guess the seed of the book began when I was just having dinner with a few friends, and we just started talking about how we'd all been thinking about writing a book. And I don't think we really talked about it, most of us, with anyone else. And then we thought, you know what? Why don't we do it? Why don't we all just make a pact and write a book together? And look, one of them is here, she who became the sun.
So exciting. Oh, you could form your own little club about, like,
Yeah, I think partly it was having that mutual support that helped us to finish the book. Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't just that we had a chat about it at dinner. It was like then we would meet every Saturday before the pandemic just to write with each other and keep each other company, and we would talk about the book. So it kind of keeps it alive in your mind as well when you have that support.
I'm a big lover of writing meetups and having friends around you who are similar to you. Yep.
Yes. Okay,
no, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, because it can feel so solitary sometimes when you're writing.
Exactly. Yeah,
really not have writing friends.
Yeah, and you can just accidentally like unlock things when you say them out loud as well. So
exactly. Yeah, even when you're just describing the plot out loud, I think sometimes you're like, wait, that doesn't make sense now that I'm saying it. You kind of adjust on the fly.
Just see their eyes glaze over and you're like, okay.
Yeah, you're like, what?